इंटरनेशनल सोशल मीडिया पटेल प्रहलाद भाई।
Himself our king. So I would like to know, rather, the people would like to know what you, congressmen, and your fellow congressmen are going to do to rein in the megalomaniac in the White House.
I'm not going to give you my best foghorn leghorn response to that. But what I was, you can go ahead and sit down. Thank you. When you talk about tyranny, when you talk about presidential power, I remember having the same discussion with Republicans when Biden was elected. The funny thing is, you're sitting here and a lot of you would probably say those January 6s who are yelling just as loud as you, who are upset just like you, and not listening.
Hey, let's restore some order. Let's restore some order. Hey, let's restore some order.
So yelling at me is not going to get any answer, okay?
Hey,
like I said, we're not going to yell.
Point of order. Hey, let's get through this. Congressman, hey.
Yeah. I've seen Game of Thrones too. Thank you. Let's go ahead and move on because if you're not going to listen to the answer, we might as well not discuss it, right? Do you want to hear the answer? If you'd stop yelling, I will answer. Otherwise, we'll move on. If you would stop talking for a second, I will answer your question. Okay? So if you listen to what we've projected, and this goes both parties, by the way. This is a bipartisan problem. REINS Act, the REINS Act, which reins in executive power for both parties, whoever's in party power, and I think it could be tweaked actually to be much better. I don't think executive privilege should be as strong as it is. I think we're out of balance right now. I think your direct representation, whether you like me or not, I'm the closest thing you have to a representative. Your senator's not going to be as representative as me, and the president's not going to be as representative as me when it comes to you, the people in this district. Likewise, I think state government needs to be more powerful than federal government. It used to be that federal funds only made up 1/3 of the money spent, and states was 2/3. It's more representative of your money and your money spent. That's better. Always push government down to the local level because you'll get better representation. I don't want to see the president make all the decisions. I don't. I didn't want to see. Do you not want to hear that I just said? I answered it directly. I said I don't want to see any president be too powerful.
Americans are deeply divided over Trump's first month back in office. About half say that he has overstepped when it comes to using presidential power, and about the same feel that he has gone too far in cutting federal programs. Joining us now is CNN's Renee Marsh and Washington correspondent for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Tia Mitchell. So I want to bring you in for some perspective and context here, Tia. The congressman and his staff seemed a little bit caught off guard by this backlash. Tell us more about his district and the people who live there and who were there at that meeting.
So Rich McCormick's district is a pretty red district. It voted for Trump by about 20% above how the district voted for Kamala Harris. However, last night's town hall was held in Roswell, which is a suburb of Atlanta. It's North Fulton County. It's one of those towns that has increasingly become more democratic as more and younger families have moved to that part of the state. So I think that even though his district is pretty red, he went to an area that was bluer. He went to an area that is less, Trumpy overall. And I think that was reflected a little bit in the turnout for this particular town hall.
Interesting, important context there. Renee, to go to you.
Using cinnamon and apple cider vinegar The right way is the difference between those.
A federal judge declined to stop a union request to halt Trump's mass firing, saying that he doesn't have the jurisdiction to review. Tell us about that.
Right, so labor unions asked this federal judge to pause the mass firing of these probationary employees that we've been seeing from agency to agency. But what the judge said is that there is a process here, and the labor unions actually have to follow that process, which is going to the labor board first before bringing this claim to the court. So he just felt that he didn't have jurisdiction. Doesn't mean that this is over. It just means that they missed a step in his eyes and needed to go through that process. But Pamela, I mean, that video really kind of highlights here the sort of cracks that we are starting to see, even if Roswell is a growing blue area here in Georgia. The fact of the matter is some 80% of the federal workforce is outside of Washington, D.C., and that includes red states like Georgia, where you have some 79,000 federal workers. So when you're talking about mass layoffs and firings, it's happening in these red districts, it's happening in these red states, and the question is going to become, how do these Republican lawmakers deal with angry people who are losing their jobs, and yet these Republican lawmakers are staying true to, or trying to stay true to, the president and his policies. It'll be interesting to see how they'll handle that, because it's not just the job cuts, but it's also the funding freezes. We have farmers in red states who say that they can't access funds. Some of them voted for Trump, but they can't access funds from the USDA. And then you have the cuts that happened at the NIH, where you have senators like Susan Collins reflecting on how, you know, these research centers that hire hundreds of thousands of employees within their communities, it's a big part of these economies, that will impact them. So I will be watching how these Republican lawmakers handle what they're hearing from their constituents who are being impacted by some of these actions.
Yeah, I was just talking to Democratic Congressman Jerry Connolly, who was saying privately some Republicans have expressed to him unease about what is going on because they're getting the heat from some of their constituents directly impacted, whether it be by the firing, not getting the aid like the farmers, people not getting the programs and services they once relied on. And I think that as this is being felt, Tia, to bring you in on that, what is the sense you're getting from voters that you're talking to? I think it's really important to sort of take the pulse across America on how this is being felt.
Yeah, and of course, you know, voters are divided a lot of times along party lines, where you see voters who are supportive of President Trump and very MAGA voters who are saying, give him time, let's root out the fraud, let's root out the waste, let's give it some time to play out. But you've seen a lot of other voters, particularly Democrats, but also some voters, as was mentioned, that are Trump supporters, saying they're concerned, again, not just about the layoffs, but about the funding freezes. They're also worried about proposals on the table to perhaps cut some of the safety net programs that a lot of voters of all political stripes rely on. We're talking about Medicaid, food stamps. Even people like Rich McCormick have said perhaps we need to find ways to save money at Social Security. And of course, there are many older Americans concerned that those cuts could come to Medicare. So these programs, we know, are popular among people, period, no matter who they voted for president. And also, let's talk about like veterans. There have been layoffs at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Again, we know our veterans are of all political stripes, for example. So I think there are a lot of Americans who just, at this juncture, are, if not upset, confused. At this point, wish there was more transparency, wish there was more information, wish there was messaging coming from the White House that shows there's a method to the madness. And without that information, there is a lot of concern we're hearing from voters. And again, that is starting to kind of cross party lines.
Renee, we're talking about the firings, and there's actually now a pause on the firings at DOD, right? Tell us about that.
So the Pentagon is saying that they're going to pause this plan for the mass firing of probationary employees. CNN had reported on Wednesday it could impact over 50,000 employees there at DOD, but they're saying they're putting the brakes on this for now because they want to review what the impacts of those firings would have on military readiness. we have reported already at other agencies like NNSA, the agency charged with maintaining and overseeing the nuclear stockpile for the country. Hundreds of employees were fired there only to have to be rehired. So what we are seeing here is the Pentagon saying, wait, before we do this, let's take a review of what the impact will be, perhaps some lessons learned from some of these other agencies.
Like at the Energy Department,
Yeah.
for one. Renee, Tia, thank you both.